Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar, coming up in the next hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses the Summit of the Future at the United Nations in New York, highlights India's vision for shaping a sustainable world for future generations. Prime Minister Modi calls for urgent reform of institutions of global governance, including the UN Security Council. He notes that global action must match global ambition. The general debate of the 79th UNGCA session gets underway from Tuesday in New York. And Israeli airstrikes hit hundreds of Hezbollah targets. 356 people killed. Thousands flee. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi held talks with the Vietnamese President To Lam in New York after the United Nations Summit of the Future at the UN General Assembly. Two leaders held talks on a wide range of topics of mutual interest. The leaders focused their discussion on global and regional development. Prime Minister Modi congratulated President To Lam on assuming enhanced leadership responsibilities and expressed hope for continued collaboration towards strengthening bilateral ties between India and Vietnam. India's Prime Minister also reiterated his sympathies with solidarity with Vietnam in the face of the loss and damage caused by Typhoon Yagi earlier this month. President To Lam thanked Prime Minister Modi for the timely supply of emergency humanitarian assistance and disaster relief by India under Operation Sadbhav. Both leaders reaffirmed the importance of deep civilizational and cultural links and growing strategic ties, marked by unwavering mutual trust, understanding and shared interests between the two countries. Recalling the visit of the Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh to India last month, both leaders also discussed prospects of advancing bilateral cooperation and further strengthening the comprehensive strategic partnership between the two countries. The leaders also exchanged views on important regional and global issues, including the Indo-Pacific, and underscored a collective role for the Global South at international platforms. Now, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Sunday addressed the United Nations Summit for the Future at the UN General Assembly in New York. Prime Minister said that while discussing the global future, the world must prioritize a human-centric approach. Prime Minister also touched on the need for responsible use of technology, advocating a balanced regulation to ensure safety.
जब हम ग्लोबल फ्यूचर की बात कर रहे हैं तो ह्यूमन सेंट्रिक अप्रोच सर्वप्रथम होनी चाहिए। सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट को प्राथमिकता देते हुए हमें मानव कल्याण, फूड, हेल्थ सिक्योरिटी यह भी सुनिश्चित करनी होगी। भारत में 250 मिलियन लोगों को गरीबी से बाहर निकालकर हमने यह दिखाया है कि सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट कैन बी सक्सेसफुल। सक्सेस का हमारा यह अनुभव हम ग्लोबल साउथ के साथ साझा करने के लिए तैयार है।
Prime Minister Modi, during his address at the UN summit, also called for reforms in global institutions, and he termed these reforms as a key to relevance of institutions. He also called the African Union's inclusion as a permanent member in the G20 as an important step in that direction.
Success of humanity lies in our collective strength, not in the battlefield. और वैश्विक शांति एवं विकास के लिए ग्लोबल संस्थाओं में रिफॉर्म्स आवश्यक है। रिफॉर्म इज द की टू रिलेवेंस। वैश्विक शांति और सुरक्षा के लिए एक तरफ आतंकवाद जैसा बड़ा खतरा है, तो दूसरी तरफ साइबर, मैरीटाइम, स्पेस जैसे अनेक संघर्ष के नए नए मैदान भी बन रहे हैं। इन सभी विषयों पर मैं जोर देकर कहूंगा कि ग्लोबल एक्शन मस्ट मैच global ambition.
Earlier on day 2 of his U.S. visit, the Prime Minister met a host of industry leaders ranging from semiconductor companies to electronics to biotechnology, where they all discussed the potential and opportunities that India has to offer. He held bilaterals as well with the Prime Minister of Nepal, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and the Prince of Kuwait. Amritpal Singh reports from New York.
On the second day of his 3-day visit to the United States, the Prime Minister engaged with CEOs of 15 top American companies. Among those who took part in the CEO roundtable were CEO Adobe Shantanu Narayan, CEO Google Sundar Pichai, and CEO IBM Arvind Krishna, among others. Taking to X, the Prime Minister said, "I had a fruitful roundtable with tech CEOs in New York discussing aspects relating to technology, innovation and more. Also highlighted the strides made by India in this field. I'm glad to see immense optimism towards India."
The Prime Minister has been focused on transforming India with his Digital India vision. He pushed us to continue making in India, designing in India. We are proud to now make our Pixel phones manufactured in India. He is really thinking about how AI can transform India in a way that benefits the people of India. He challenged us to think about applications in healthcare, education, agriculture, and he's also thinking about the infrastructure of India.
Prime Minister stated to me that he wants to make India energy independent. He wants to rapidly grow clean energy in the country. And meeting was for clean energy. Prime Minister is a very bright man. He picks up things. He's very bright. I mean, he understands the issues. He understands the challenges. And I think that he gets it.
Prime Minister also held bilateral meetings with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in New York. Prime Minister reiterated India's support for early restoration of peace and stability in the region. Prime Minister Modi also met with Sheikh Sabah Khalid Al Hamad Al Sabah, the Crown Prince of Kuwait. They discussed cooperation in sectors like pharma, food processing, technology and energy. Prime Minister also met with Nepal's Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli and discussed ways to cooperate in areas of energy, technology and trade. On Saturday, Prime Minister Modi, in his meeting with US President Joe Biden, had welcomed new private sector cooperation on emerging technologies. Earlier in the day, addressing the diaspora at Long Island, the Prime Minister had said that Bharat doesn't wait for opportunities, it creates them. No wonder then, global tech companies are only interested in investing and engaging with India. With cameraman Sumit Nodial, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in New York.
Well, earlier on day 2, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also gave the Pushpa Mantra for making India a developed country. Addressing the Indian diaspora at the Nassau Coliseum in New York, the Prime Minister said that these 5 pillars together will build a Viksit Bharat. And talking about India's growing diplomatic stature, the Prime Minister said that India is a strong voice for the global South.
A leader and his ecstatic admirers, rise of India on the global stage, celebration of India and Indian diaspora. It was a historic day for the Indian diaspora members in Nassau County in New York as they accorded a memorable welcome to Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The Nassau Coliseum reverberated with thundering applause on several occasions as Prime Minister Modi recounted the remarkable rise of India and the Indian diaspora on the global stage. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said, "India is now the land of opportunities. It doesn't wait for opportunities anymore. In fact, it creates them."
भारत आज लैंड ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटीज है, अवसरों की धरती है। अब भारत अवसरों का इंतजार नहीं करता, अब भारत अवसरों का निर्माण करता है।
Prime Minister spoke about his vision for India's future, calling his vision Pushp, which means flower, defining each letter of the word as a path to progress and prosperity of the nation.
आपको एक शब्द याद रहेगा, पुष्प। हाँ, कमल मान लीजिए, मुझे इतराज नहीं है। पुष्प, और मैं पुष्प को डिफाइन करता हूं, पी फॉर प्रोग्रेसिव भारत, यू फॉर अनस्टॉपेबल भारत, एस फॉर स्पिरिचुअल भारत, एच फॉर ह्यूमैनिटी फर्स्ट को समर्पित भारत, पी फॉर प्रोस्परस भारत, यानी Pushpa.
The Indian Prime Minister also said that for the world, AI stands for artificial intelligence, but he believes AI also represents the America-India spirit.
मैं मानता हूं कि AI का मतलब है अमेरिकन इंडियन, अमेरिका इंडिया, ये स्पिरिट है, और वही तो नई दुनिया का AI पावर है।
Modi in Us program was attended by some 15,000 Indian American diaspora from across the United States. A mini India was created in the stadium as performers showcased the cultural diversity of India amidst jubilant audience members. As Prime Minister Narendra Modi listed the great achievements by India in the recent years, he also presented a picture of what kind of power does India aspire to be in the future, not the one that conquers, but the one that inspires. With camera person Sumit Naudiyal, Shubhendu Ghosh for DD India in New York.
What's still to come here on DD India News Hour? Israeli airstrikes killed over 300 people in Lebanon. Record rains kill at least 7 people in Japan's Noto region. And France's new cabinet holds its first meeting.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn, and now let's touch base with Amritpal Singh. He's joining us from New York with updates from the UN General Assembly from the Summit of the Future, which Prime Minister had spoken at earlier today. Amrit, if you can sum up the themes, that this summit is looking at and what likely outcomes will come from this summit.
Well, this summit is a two-day summit, the Summit of the Future. Essentially, Mark aims to bring multilateralism to provide solutions to the problems that the humanity currently faces and the problems of the future. Now, what happened yesterday was that the Global Pact for Future was adopted, which essentially talks about how to build consensus on dealing with AI, with war, the ongoing conflicts, the ecological problem and climate change faced by the world. Today, on the second day of the summit, the Prime Minister spoke and addressed the world leaders at that summit, where he spoke about the need for taking collective action towards arresting these problems. He said, if I can quote the Prime Minister, he said that global action should match global ambition. Essentially saying that it's very well to talk about, that we need collective action, we need to tackle climate change, there are sustainable development goals that need to be achieved, but you have to bring out an actionable plan and take a collective action. You can have an ambition to deal with, say, sustainable development, but unless you fulfill your international commitments of achieving those goals, you wouldn't, and we see the world is failing behind it. Or saying that terrorism is a problem that afflicts the whole world, but then selectively choosing to whom and whom not to call terrorists. So things like that. So the Prime Minister today appealed to the world that you can only deal with these problems if you have an actionable plan, one. Second, if your intent is right, and you have to use technology to bridge the global divide of development. Mark.
Indeed. And India, of course, represents about 1/6 of humanity, Amrit, and also the voice of the global south to a large extent. The Prime Minister, speaking also about reforms that need to match this kind of ambition. When we look at reforms, he did mention also about what happened under India's G20 presidency, in a sense, the African Union coming in and sort of coaxing the world to understand that this is the way the world has to move in terms of reforms.
Absolutely, Mark. In fact, it wasn't the India preaching from the purge. Prime Minister shared that how India took up its part of the responsibility, be it, say, the joining of African Union at the G20 summit hosted under India's presidency, be it India sharing its DPI with the global south, or the Prime Minister today offering that we can share our DPI experience with the world, saying that it is one earth, one family, and that's the motto that India follows. Or, in the past during COVID, when the largest or the biggest vaccination drive was launched in India, India had to vaccinate its own people. Yet India gave vaccines to other countries of the world. So setting an example, saying that it's a collective responsibility, but we have in the past partaken our part of the responsibility and are ready to do so in the future. So I think the Prime Minister's message was that we need to collectively act, and India's example can be followed around the world if you have to achieve these goals, be it on climate action, be it on sustainable development. He said that how 250 million people were lifted out of poverty. So you make that contribution and say that sustainable development, although while we were doing all this, we were following sustainable development. Mark.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Amritpal Singh, for joining us at this time. Moving on then to our next story. Israel has said that it had launched airstrikes against hundreds of Hezbollah targets on Monday. 356 people have been killed, and tens of thousands of people were fleeing for safety in Lebanon's. It was the deadliest day in Lebanon in decades. But, after some of the heaviest cross-border exchanges of fire since the hostilities flared up last October, Israel had also warned the people in Lebanon to evacuate areas where their armed movement was storing weapons. Nasser Yassin, the Lebanese minister coordinating this crisis response, told Reuters the agency from which we got this news, that 89 temporary shelters in schools and the like had been activated with a capacity, in fact, for more than 26,000 people and civilians who had fled Israeli atrocities. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel sent a short video statement addressed to the Lebanese people. Netanyahu urged the people of Lebanon to get out of harm's way. After almost a year of war against Hamas in Gaza on its southern border, Israel is shifting its focus to the northern frontier, where Iran-backed Hezbollah has been firing rockets into Israel in support of Hamas, also supported by Iran. Israel's military said that it had struck Hezbollah in Lebanon's south, east and north. Lebanon's health ministry also said that 356 people had been killed and 1,246 wounded. One Lebanese official said that it was Lebanon's highest daily death toll from violence since the 1975-1990 civil war. The Israeli Defense Minister Gallant on Monday said it marked a significant peak in the nearly year-long conflict. Israel's Iron Dome intercepted rockets launched from Lebanon on Monday near Tefin. United States is sending a small number of additional troops to West Asia, given the escalating tensions between Israel and Lebanon's Hezbollah. That's what the Pentagon had said. They declined to specify. Our next story. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed concern over the escalating tensions there in Lebanon. He urged the parties concerned to de-escalate and look for a diplomatic solution. His spokesperson, Jurak, said that Guterres is very concerned about the large number of civilian casualties reported by Lebanon.
I can tell you that the Secretary General is indeed alarmed by the escalating situation along the Blue Line. He's very concerned about the large number of civilian casualties being reported by the Lebanese authorities, as well as the thousands of displaced persons amidst the most intense exchange of fire across the Blue Line since October of last year. He expresses great concern for the safety of civilians, both in southern Lebanon and in northern Israel, as well as the UN staff in those areas. Expect more.
Well, in France, new cabinet members held their first meeting on Monday with the French Prime Minister Michel Barnier. And the new cabinet includes ministers from the Conservative Party as well as centrists of the French President Emmanuel Macron's coalition. However, the job of the finance minister was given to a little-known 33-year-old Antoine Armand of Macron's party, having been turned down by several senior politicians. Jean-Noël Barrot, he was promoted to foreign minister in France's new government, naming peace, climate, democracy and prosperity as the major challenges facing French diplomacy on Monday. The new cabinet, formed after elections in July, marks a rightward shift in domestic policy, but Barrot hails from the centrist Modern Party, and he already sat in the previous government as well. The foreign affairs is one of the key domains where Macron retains some powers. And, well, the new Europe minister, in fact, Benjamin Haddad, a fluent English speaker with excellent contacts in Washington, D.C., where he spent several years working in a think tank there.
As I take over this role, I am aware of the scale of the challenges which lie before us. Stéphane, Sayor and I talked about them. I'll talk about four: the challenges of peace, that of the climate, that of democracy, and that of prosperity.
Record rains have killed at least 7 people in Japan's Noto region as of Monday. The public broadcaster NHK has reported this. Among those killed was a person who was working on quake reconstruction, while 2 people were still missing. This is what NHK has reported. Early rainfall hit record numbers, 121 millimeters, on Saturday morning in the Wajima place in the prefecture there, while the neighboring Suzu had received 84.5 mm in just an hour, as that's considered an all-time high. The Noto region is still recovering from the massive damage caused by a 7.6 magnitude earthquake on New Year's Day, which killed more than 300 people in Suzu, Wajima and surrounding areas. The British Finance Minister Rachel Reeves said on Monday the era of trickle-down, trickle-out economics was over, as she delivered a speech at the Labour Party conference ahead of an October budget. Reeves ruled out a return to austerity, instead painting a picture of a future Britain richer from investment in manufacturing and services, where work paid a decent wage and where the new generations could thrive.
Thank you. So we are calling time on the ideas of the past, calling time on the days when government stood back, left crucial sectors to fend for themselves and turned a blind eye to where things are made and who makes them. The era of trickle-down, trickle-out economics is over. And so I can announce that next month, alongside our Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, we will publish our plans for a new industrial strategy for Britain.
Well, let's get you some updates from the Russia-Ukraine conflict. A Russian missile strike on Ukraine's southeastern city of Zaporizhia on Monday hit critical infrastructure and injured at least 2 people after attacks on the city late on Sunday wounded 21. One of 2 Russian strikes on Monday evening hit an unidentified facility and another landed in an open area, the regional governor said. And Ukraine's Air Force had issued a missile threat warning across southern regions. Late on Sunday, Russia launched at least 7 airstrikes, wounding 21 people and damaging 13 apartment buildings, educational institutions, cars and garages. The Ukrainian Energy Ministry said that due to Sunday's airstrikes, power supplies were cut to over 16,000 consumers in the region, but were later restored. The head of the United Nations Refugee Agency is calling on world leaders to fulfill a duty to protect refugees and migrants. The UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, spoke to NHK in New York on Sunday, and he noted that a constant increase in the number of refugees and displaced people around the world has now reached 120 million. He cited the conflicts in Ukraine, Gaza and Sudan and turmoil in Venezuela.
I think that to denigrate immigrants and refugees, to ridicule them, to worse, stigmatize, exclude them is very dangerous, because what needs to be achieved when you have a large foreign population in a community is to find good ways to integrate them. And I think that to denigrate immigrants and refugees, to ridicule them, to worse, stigmatize, exclude them is very dangerous, because what needs to be achieved when you have a large foreign population in a community is to find good ways to integrate them.
The former U.S. President and current Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump has confirmed that he would be the sole featured speaker at this year's All Smith charity. It's a dinner in New York, and it's typically a good-humored one and bipartisan political event that Vice President Kamala Harris said that she is skipping in favor of battleground state campaigning. Trump confirmed in the Truth Social post that he uses most of the time on Monday that he would speak at this October 17 dinner, calling it sad, but not surprising that Harris has opted out of this event. The gala benefits Catholic charities traditionally and has been used to promote collegiality, as well as presidential candidates from both the parties appearing on the same night and trading barbs. But on Saturday, Harris's campaign said that the Democratic nominee would not go to this event, breaking with presidential tradition, and she could campaign instead in a battleground state less than 3 weeks before Election Day. Well, let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Thousands of workers from renowned hotels went on strike in San Francisco on Sunday. The workers, they demanded better wages and also protested the pandemic-era staffing cuts, were citing 50% reduction in workforce resulting in heavier workloads. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission. We'll move on to some other stories now. Moving on then, coming up, the new Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayake looks for industrial cooperation with India. An EU observer congratulates Sri Lanka on its successful polls, but criticizes the long curfew during counting. Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. Here's a recap of our main stories. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses the Summit of the Future at the United Nations in New York. Highlights India's vision for shaping a sustainable world for future generations. PM Modi also calls for urgent reform of institutions of global governance, including the United Nations Security Council. He notes that global action must match global ambition. The general debate of the 79th UNGCA session gets underway from Tuesday in New York. Israeli airstrikes hit hundreds of Hezbollah targets. 356 people killed, thousands flee. The US President Joe Biden welcomed the President of the United Arab Emirates to the White House. Both leaders have discussed ways to de-escalate tensions between Israel and Lebanon, as well as efforts to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will meet separately with the UAE President, the first in what was expected to be a series of foreign leader gatherings during the week of the United Nations General Assembly. The UN General Assembly High-Level Week will begin on Tuesday with representatives of 193 member countries convening at the World Body's headquarters in New York. This year's theme is Leaving No One Behind, acting together for the advancement of peace, sustainable development and human dignity for present and future generations. This in fact is a complicated moment for the UN, with conflicts in Gaza, as well as climate change, it's a conflict in itself, and concerns over the rise of artificial intelligence at the forefront of many global leaders' minds. Another key issue under discussion is likely to be the reform of the Security Council, which the wider world body has long called for. And with this general debate, the key event of any UN General Assembly, it begins on September 24, and speeches from leaders of member states will make up what that debate is. Each country will be given about 15 to 20 minutes to speak before the international community, As is the tradition, Brazil's president will be the first to take the podium, and that's followed by the US President Joe Biden. Over 6 days, a succession of world leaders will address this assembly, laying out their national priorities as well as views on global affairs. The Mexican Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Alicia Bárcena, called for urgent reforms of the United Nations Security Council at the UN Summit of the Future. She highlighted the legitimacy crisis that the UN is facing, calling for the abolition of veto power and an overhaul of the UN Security Council to better represent the geopolitical realities of the global South.
We cannot hide our dismay at the fact that the ambition for UN system reform, especially of the Security Council, has been diluted despite its evident ineffectiveness in recent years. Thus, it remains pending to adjust this mechanism to the geopolitical reality that includes Global South and eliminates the veto once and for all.
Earlier, world leaders adopted the Pact for the Future at the United Nations headquarters in New York. The pact covers 56 themes, including peace and security, sustainable development, climate change, and transformation of global governance. The Pact for the Future is the UN's master plan for tackling challenges that lie ahead for humanity. It also promises to accelerate efforts to attain sustainable development goals, which aim for eradication of extreme poverty, among other goals, by 2030. With a lot of diplomatic action in New York this week, India's External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar is set to make the country's statement for India on behalf of Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the United Nations General Assembly during the general debate, and he will speak on September 28. The general debate of the 79th UNGCA session is taking place from the 24th to the 30th of September. After years of turmoil in the island nation, National People's Power leader Anura Kumara Dissanayake was sworn in as the 9th executive president of Sri Lanka on Monday. And in his inaugural address, the leftist alliance leader Dissanayake assured of his dedication to uphold the sovereignty and strengthen the democracy of the country, acknowledging the challenges that lie before his government. Here are the details.
Marxist-leaning politician Aruna Kumara Dissanayake took oath as Sri Lanka's president, a day after he won a comprehensive victory in a closely contested election. These elections knocked out the incumbent president Ranil Wickremesinghe and opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. The mandate is being seen as a vote against the established political parties which have been in power for many years. This was the country's first election since its economy buckled in 2022 under a severe foreign exchange shortage, leaving it unable to pay for imports of essential including fuel, medicine and cooking gas. The protests forced then-President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to flee and later resign.
We'll see a lot of old players will be taken off from the parliament, and well-educated and more youngsters coming into the parliament is a very good opportunity for Sri Lanka go for a proper change.
Dissanayake had promised to dissolve parliament within 45 days of taking office for a fresh mandate for his policies in general elections. As per experts, the parliamentary elections can be held as early as in November this year. His party, Janataka Vimukti Peramuna, has only 3 parliamentarians in the 225-member house, which would make it difficult to run the government. On the other hand, as the new government takes shape, people would be looking forward to fulfillment of various promises made by the new president. Voters, particularly the youth, were drawn to his promises of cleaning up the country's politics and easing the economic burden on the populace.
We have a deep understanding that we have got a challenging country. Our politics must be cleaner than this. There is a need for a political culture that people expect. We will commit ourselves to that. The public have a very negative view of politicians and politics.
55-year-old Dissanayake presented himself as the candidate of change for those reeling under austerity measures linked to a $2.9 billion International Monetary Fund bailout. What needs to be seen is that if the new government relaxes austerity measures to ease the troubles for the poor. Despite the uncertainty, Disanayake's election represents a significant political transformation in Sri Lanka. His ability to navigate economic reform and fulfill his promises will define whether his political shift becomes a long-lasting change or a brief departure from the norm. Ahmed Muin Farooqi's report for DD India.
Well, the election observer mission of the European Union held a press conference in Colombo on Monday following the peaceful conclusion of the presidential election in the island nation. The chief observer, Nacho Sanchez Amor, commented that the election commission he complimented the election commission for its wonderful work, and he criticized the hour-long curfew that was imposed. That's what happened on the night after the election because of counting.
The same day in which a state institution, as the election commission said, this has been the most peaceful electoral campaign and electoral process in our history. The same day, there was a curfew. And this is not matching.
Well, the aircraft maker Boeing has said that it made a best and final offer to the striking union workers that in fact includes bigger raises as well as larger bonuses than a proposed contract that was overwhelmingly rejected. Now, the company said that the offer includes pay raises of 30% over 4 years, up from the rejected 25% raises. It also talked about doubling the size of the ratification bonuses to $6,000 and it would restore annual bonuses that the company had sought to replace with contributions to workers' retirement accounts. The company said that its offer was contingent on members of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers ratifying the contract by late Friday night, when the strike will be little over 2 weeks old. India's Home Minister Amit Shah attended the Bharatiya Janata Party rally in the Yamuna Nagar in New Delhi, in fact in the North Indian state of Haryana on Monday, ahead of the upcoming elections there for the Assembly of Haryana. Now, speaking at this event, he said that the BJP plans to achieve the coming 5 years in the state of Haryana to take office there once again.
आने वाले 5 साल में 8000 मेगावाट का नया थर्मल पावर स्टेशन यमुनानगर में बनाएंगे। औद्योगिक बुनियादी ढांचे पर सब्सिडी देंगे। विश्वकर्मा महाविद्यालय बनाएंगे। माता और शिशु का स्वास्थ्य केंद्र यमुनानगर में बनाएंगे। सिविल अस्पताल में आईसीयू बनाएंगे। ओलंपिक की नर्सरी बनाएंगे। और माताओं बहनों, जोर से ताली बजाना, सभी महिलाओं को प्रति माह 2100 रुपये का चेक आपके बैंक अकाउंट में आ जाएगा।
India's Telecom Minister Jyotiraditya Scindia has said that the number of mobile connections have increased to 117 crore from 90 crore previously in India, and India has emerged now as the leading telecom market on the global stage. And he stated that the Telecom Ministry has put up 7,258 new towers throughout India in 100 days. He was speaking at a media briefing on the government's 100 days since it took office.
और मुझे खुशी है आपको रिपोर्ट करते हुए कि 100 दिनों में 15 सितंबर तक 7,258 नए मोबाइल के टावर्स हमने देश के कोने-कोने में लगाए हैं।
Nidhi Khare, who is the Secretary Department of Consumer Affairs, spoke on the NDA government's 100 days achievement in an interaction with the media, and on various issues the Secretary mentioned that the ministry has taken steps to curb price rise of food materials by means of NAFED and NCCF, among other steps for price control of edible oils setting up of quality control centers in Kolkata, Mumbai and Bengaluru to check battery and charger of electrical vehicles. And also this is in the light of increasing demand for such things.
Achieved was procurement of against a target of 5 LMT Rabi onion for buffer. 4.7 LMT of Rabi onion was procured by NCCF and NAFED. And now the disposal of onions at subsidized rate of 35 rupees per kg has been initiated from September 5th, 2024. Now we come to the tasks that we completed this year with the help of National Test House, and the most important was unmanned aircraft systems certification.
India's Civil Aviation Minister K. Ram Mohan Naidu emphasized the importance of aviation psychology and managing stress and fatigue to ensure aircraft safety. Speaking at a national seminar in New Delhi, he noted that human factors are the key contributors to accidents. He urged for continuous upscaling and upskilling as well as in this fast-growing sector. And with over 1,200 planes on order, Naidu called for enhanced training as well of both technical and cognitive skills of the aviation personnel.
We see that even in the Western countries, they are also having a specific division of aviation psychology. And it is an emerging space right now. And considering the human errors that have been taking place, I also feel that it is important to have it in our country also. It is in a very budding stage. So we would request the cooperation of all the airliners and everyone so that we can collectively address this aviation psychology.
Let's take a look now at other stories making the news. After an impressive turnout of over 61% in the first phase of assembly elections in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, it's now set for the second phase. 26 assembly constituencies go to the polls on September 25. The second phase covers the constituencies of Riyasi, Rajouri and Poonch districts in the Jammu region and Srinagar and Budgam in the Kashmir Valley. To commemorate 75 years of its Raising Day celebrations on the 9th of October, India's Territorial Army launched the first ever expedition from Siachen Glacier to Indira Point, traversing a distance of approximately 5,500 kilometers. The team hoisted the tricolour underwater at the Indira Point, which is the southernmost tip of the country. A team of officials headed by the Chief Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar is on a two-day visit to the Indian state of Jharkhand. The team has arrived there to review the poll preparations in the state ahead of the assembly elections. The team will hold a series of meetings with political parties, the enforcement agencies and government officials. Jharkhand is going to the polls later this year. Still to come here on DD India News Hour. Sri Lanka beat New Zealand by 63 runs in the first test. ICC unveils Whatever It Takes. That's the official event song of the ICC Women's T20 World Cup 2024. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Mark Lynn. The 10th edition of the World Free Zones Organization Congress began in Dubai on Monday. And this three-day annual event, it brings together leading experts, decision makers, stakeholders from free zones, logistics and multilateral sectors globally. The theme for this year is zones and shifting global economic structures, unlocking new investment avenues. And this aims to explore the latest trends, emerging technologies, as well as innovations shaping free zone sector. The session, featuring ministries and top industry leaders, was held on day one, and discussions took place on AI and other such technologies and global trade.
I think it's in the nature of the Indians. Every Indian wants to be an entrepreneur, right? Wants to start his own business, which is a fantastic approach. And when you come to IFSA, when you come to our free zone, we are supporting them.
Well, you're watching DD India. It's time now for the sports news. And the chess governing body FIDE, the General Assembly, has agreed to consider lifting parts of a ban on Russia as well as Belarus players. That was imposed after the conflict in Ukraine. Delegates from 66 countries supported a last-minute proposal by the FIDE Council to consult the International Olympic Committee about letting some players and teams from Russia and Belarus, such as those with disabilities or children aged under 12, to return to international events. The FIDE General Assembly is being held in the Hungarian capital Budapest. The left-arm spinner Prabhat Jayasuriya took 2 overs to polish off the New Zealand tail and complete a 5-wicket haul. Sri Lanka sealed a 63-run victory at the Galle Cricket Stadium, and this was the first test. They were chasing 275, the New Zealanders, the Kiwis, and they were bowled out for 211, but Rachin Ravindra stood out. He made a gallant 92. But the other batters failed to negotiate the sharp turn and low bounce. It was, of course, the 4th innings, so pretty tough batting in those conditions. And Jayasuriya claimed his 8th 5-wicket haul. New Zealand began the final day needing 68 runs for a memorable win with 2 wickets in hand, but Sri Lanka took only 4 overs to wrap up that victory. The second test begins on Thursday. It's also in Galle. Aidan Markham hit a composed 69 and guided South Africa to a 7-wicket victory in the 3rd ODI, avoiding a clean sweep. This is against Afghanistan in Sharjah. Chasing 170, the Proteas overcame a brief wobble at 80 for 3, and Markham, I beg your pardon, and Tristan Stubbs hit 26 and an unbeaten 90 stand they put on. But Afghanistan had already won this series. They this time struggled with the bat. Rahmatullah Gurbaz hit a valiant 89 of 94 balls. 3 key Afghan batters were run out. Ghaznafar hit 31. South Africa capitalized on the absence of Rashid Khan. That's one of the reasons why they won quite easily. In women's cricket, at New Zealand versus this is the New Zealand versus Australia. First T20, New Zealand had to face 5% of the match. They had a fine of 5% of their match fee. This is for maintaining a slow over rate. Australia won the T20 in Mackay. They won by 5 wickets. The second match, they won by 29 runs. It was at the same venue. It was found that the opposition team, while the White Ferns were short of the acceptable over rate. The New Zealand captain, Sophie Devine, pled guilty to the offence and accepted the sanctions. And the teams play another T20 international at the same venue on Tuesday. That's the 24th of September, before travelling to the UAE for the ICC Women's T20 World Cup. That begins on the 3rd of October. And talking about that World Cup, just 10 days to go, and the ICC has released the official event song for the tournament. It's getting the fans all, in the mood, because it's a melodious tune. Whatever It Takes is the event song. It's a collaboration between the all-girl pop group Wish and the music director Mickey McCleary. Composed Parth Parekh, as well as produced by Bay Music House. It's 1 minute 40 seconds, and this is a video that features highlight reels of some of the most memorable moments in Women's T20 World Cups, alongside choreography from Wish that highlights the excitement as well as the energy surrounding this event. The 17-day spectacle, which begins on the 3rd of October, will feature 10 teams across 23 matches and will be played in the UAE at 2 venues, that's Dubai and Sharjah. That's all in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let's know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those of you on the go, log on to our website. In fact, you can also, get a scan of that QR code and you can get the apps available on Android as well as iOS. Thanks for watching. From all of us here, Namaskar.